Thank you. We're happy to convene this hearing before the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless. We had a public hearing on Monday, April 27th, and recessed the public hearing until today, June 1st, at this time in this location, 2 o'clock in room 400 City Hall. This is a resolution dealing with important resources and increasing resources and preservation for housing opportunities, and we will ask the clerk to read the title of the resolution.
Resolution authorizing City Council's Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless to hold hearings concerning increasing resources to expand the production and preservation of affordable housing in the City of Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. We will note other committee members if you are in the building. We have begun the hearing, and we thank Councilman Greenlee for his presence. Thank you very much. We will now call forward panel 1, Deb McCulloch, Office of Housing and Community Development, and Kelvin Jeremiah, Executive Director and CEO of Philadelphia Housing Authority. Thank you both.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Blackwell, members of the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless, and members of City Council. I'm Melissa Long, the Deputy Director of the Office of Housing. I will be giving testimony for Deborah McCulloch today. She's attending her daughter's high school graduation. As I noted in the testimony presented in the first session of this hearing, since fiscal year 2002, the funding Philadelphia receives from the Community Development Block Grant and home programs, the two primary sources of federal housing funds, has been reduced by 46%. In fiscal year 2002, Philadelphia received a total of $88 million from these two programs. In fiscal year 2016, we will receive $47 million, a drop of more than $41 million. The cumulative reduction in funding in these programs since 2003 is more than $310 million. The City of Philadelphia has responded by identifying new resources, targeting existing resources to our most pressing needs, and by working with partners like the Philadelphia Housing Authority by leveraging non-city resources. In 2005, the city created the Housing Trust Fund. This local source of revenue supports housing production, housing preservation, and homelessness prevention. It is funded with a portion of the mortgage and recording fees that accompany each property sale, mortgage, and mortgage refinancing in the city, and those fees were increased in 2002 to provide an additional revenue to the trust fund. Since its inception, the Housing Trust Fund has provided nearly $100 million in local funding, leveraged more than $300 million in non-city funds, and providing housing and housing support for more than 20,000 households. The city has also aggressively pursued federal funding available through competitive grants. Beginning in 2009, the city received approximately $68 million in Neighborhood Stabilization Program funding, NSP. These funds supported the rehabilitation and resale of 162 homes that had been foreclosed upon, development of 290 multifamily rental homes, and 40 new construction mixed-income homes. In addition to the goal of providing affordable housing, NSP funds were intended to create economic activity during this recession, and Philadelphia helped meet that goal by expending all of its NSP funds ahead of schedule. The city is also garnering federal resources in support of its place-based strategy of neighborhood revitalization. With its partners, Philadelphia was awarded 2 grants from the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative, a $30 million implementation grant for housing and community development in North Central Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Housing Authority, and a $500,000 planning grant for the Sharswood neighborhood that we hope that will result in implementation funds. In addition, the city has received a Promise Zone designation for a portion of West Philadelphia that includes Mantua and the surrounding neighborhoods. The Promise Zone designation brings with it priority for certain federal funding programs and has helped draw investment from a variety of federal agencies. This includes a Department of Labor grant to provide job training and placement for young people involved in the justice system, a Department of Education grant to improve school climate, and a Department of Agriculture grant to improve the accessibility of fresh foods for SNAP recipients. To ensure that the city is able to continue to support new housing development, OHCD has focused its efforts on developments that use low-income housing tax credits. The use of tax credits maximizes private investment in affordable housing. As an example, the $8.7 million in city funds going to 5 developments that recently received tax credit awards last month will leverage $70 million in non-city funds. In addition, OHCD has partnered, again, with the Philadelphia Housing Authority to make developments receiving tax credits eligible for annual contribution contracts, or ACCs. And in its last round of funding awards, selected a development seeking 4% tax credits as a means of making our funds go further. One effective way of ensuring the availability of affordable housing is to keep current residents in their homes, and OHCD has taken strategic steps to do so. Although our federal housing funds have declined precipitously since 2002, we have maintained the funding we allocate to the Basic Systems Repair Program, which provides home repairs to low and moderate income homeowners at a relatively constant level. We have also tried to stretch those scarce dollars through innovative partnerships with Rebuilding Together Philadelphia and Habitat for Humanity, in which repairs provided by BSRP are paired with those offered by RTP and Habitat. OHCD has also allocated resources to prevent homeowners from losing their homes due to foreclosure. OHCD and the Court of Common Pleas have worked together to create a foreclosure prevention program that is a national model. OHCD supports this program with outreach to threatened homeowners, housing counseling, and free legal assistance. Since 2008, this program has saved more than 8,000 homeowners from foreclosure. OHCD does not, of course, determine the level of federal housing resources it receives. What we can do is to use the resources we are provided in a strategic and thoughtful fashion, whether it is identifying alternate local or federal resources, stretching our housing dollars with targeted investments, or allocated our funding to cost-effective programs. OHCD has done just that. I'm not suggesting that these steps are sufficient to overcome the loss of $310 million in federal funding, because they are not. However, I can assure this committee and council that OHCD is working to have the greatest impact possible with the funds we do receive, while seeking every opportunity to identify and secure additional funding. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jeremiah?
Good afternoon,
Good
Chairwoman
afternoon.
Blackwell.
Thank you so much for taking time from your schedule and being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Councilwoman. Councilman Brindley, members of the Committee on Housing and Neighborhood Development and the Homeless. I'm Calvin Jeremiah, the President and CEO of the Philadelphia Housing Authority. Thank you for inviting me back to speak on the need for more affordable housing in Philadelphia. For those of you who are in attendance today who may not have joined us in April for the first part of this hearing, I will just quickly provide some background information on PHA and the critical demand for housing in the city. PHA serves over 80,000 low-income Philadelphians through its public housing and housing choice voucher programs. We own and manage more than 15,000 public housing units and serve more than 17,000 households through our HCV program, formerly known as Section 8. PHA not only provides housing assistance through its public housing and HCV programs, but it also offers various home ownership opportunities and provides over $8 million annually to support programs and services to help our families become self-reliant. PHA is committed to providing affordable housing opportunities to households whose incomes not exceed 50% of the family median income for the city, focusing primarily on those earning less than 31%. Even though resources are targeted to those in greatest need of assistance, PHA still maintains a wait list in excess of 90,000 applicants. As I mentioned in April, PHA has established a 6 and 5 initiative designed to add 6,000 affordable housing units to its inventory over the period 2013 to 2018 in order to reverse a decade-long reduction in public housing units. However, in order to truly solve the affordable housing crisis in Philadelphia, we cannot look at housing in isolation. I strongly believe that affordable housing is an issue of basic human dignity and a human rights issue as well. My testimony today will cover 6 proposed solutions for addressing Philadelphia's affordable housing crisis. Members of the committee, Philadelphia housing crisis is a symptom of deep-rooted, very entrenched poverty. Members of the committee, it is my view that the affordable housing crisis that confronts this great city is also an issue of deep-seated structural poverty. In order to confront the housing crisis, we must address the root causes of poverty that persist in Philadelphia through conscious policy decisions. This can only be done by leveraging the transformative power of government with private and philanthropic partnerships, including community and faith-based organizations. As a starting point, the city must change its approach on wages, access to health care, education, employment, job training, and government entitlement programs, together with housing to truly eliminate poverty. I believe this is possible if there is intergovernmental and political support to do so. This very hearing is a step in that direction. Philadelphia, like many other cities across America, has struggled with how to address blighted community and underfunded public housing, as well as maintenance and expansion of affordable housing. Public housing once relegated low-income people into concentrated areas, which became breeding grounds for drugs, crime, and poverty. The high cost of housing in the city puts neighborhoods out of the reach of the poor and working families. This results in families not being able to save for a home, invest in their children's education, and move to areas of opportunity. Achieving goals of self-sufficiency takes more than just putting roofs over people's heads. It takes quality education, comprehensive social services, and job training that lead to high rates of sustainable employment. Solving the poverty problem will surely solve the housing crisis. The unemployment rate, for example, at PHA's 57 developments across the city is currently 67.8%. 67.8% of our population are currently unemployed compared to the 9.5% across the city average. The high unemployment rate is a reflection of high rates of educational achievement. The most requested social services by PHA residents aged 18 to 30 is assistance with achieving general education diploma or GED. PHA testing of residents has shown an average literacy rate at the 4th and 5th grade levels and an average numeracy rate of 3 to 4th grade level. According to the Penn Charitable Trust 2013 State of the City report, citywide, 82% of 8th graders tested at basic or below basic proficiency in math and reading. Many of our neighbors endure devastating conditions that persist year after year, generation after generation. It cannot be denied that there is a connection between the housing crisis and entrenched poverty. This can only be addressed by a comprehensive, holistic approach to address the underlying issues. These problems must be addressed together in order to get to the root of this dilemma. None of us can do this alone. It is time for us to be united, to be on a united front and engage with urgency, because the future of this great city, I believe, depends on it. The second is the city and state must do more for affordable housing. Madam Chair, members of the committee, across the country, public housing authorities like PHA has been reaching out to their state and local elected officials to support affordable housing. As I have stated before, PHA relies almost entirely on the federal government for funding, a source that is increasingly becoming unreliable and unpredictable. At the Ideas Cities Festival in New York City, the Secretary of HUD observed that relying on federal funds to help affordable housing initiatives is, quote unquote, not a good idea. That's from the Secretary of HUD. The cold, hard truth, the Secretary observed, is that federal dollars are scarce and will not be able to fully address housing issues without a comprehensive collaborative strategy. The city and state must step up and fill some of the gap created by the federal government's disinvestment in affordable housing. Many large cities have answered that housing authorities' call for assistance. Cities like New York City, Boston, Chicago, Miami, and LA are all investing heavily in affordable housing. In New York City, for example, the mayor, working with the city council, recently approved $100 million in city funds for the New York City Housing Authority, an act that was matched by an additional $100 million from the state government. Here in Philadelphia, the council's affordable housing plan would only make affordable housing a priority if the housing discourse is matched by a substantial investment, financial investment, by the city and state as well. Such an investment can take multiple forms. To truly be successful, our housing policies need to be re-envisioned by considering, one, what affordable housing is, how best to finance public housing, and yes, the accountability question. We have to re-envision affordable housing. Public housing should not be a repository of the unwelcome, whether that is due to race, class, or poverty. Housing designs that weave together affordable housing into the fabric of the larger community in layout and demographics erase boundaries of race and class and best serve the community as a whole. Similarly, designs that address the needs of special population, particularly seniors and the disabled, while blending them into the community instead of segregating them, contributing to a better community. Neighborhoods should be anchored by home ownerships, for which opportunities should be maximized, but balanced with rental housing, with sustainable, energy-efficient designs. Parks, community spaces, transportation options are also critical to removing public housing from blighted neighborhoods ridden with poverty and crime to being communities of choice. And yes, equally important, members of the committee, good neighborhood schools and community amenities are also critical components. We have to re-envision financing for affordable housing. Creativity is essential to financing public housing in times of dwindling resources. Finding opportunities and incentives for expanding collaboration with public, private, and philanthropic investment partnerships must be aggressively prioritized, as well as innovative collaborations with other organizations. Reliable, outcome-driven funding opportunities for community redevelopment are needed, as well as preservation of low-income housing tax credit, a critical asset in development of affordable housing. Additionally, the construction cost must be addressed. Construction costs involving PHA developments now hovers around $336,000 per unit. Construction labor costs can be lowered by working with labor unions to develop project labor agreements through a statutory exception to the prevailing wage regulations. Investing in the production of affordable housing not only addresses the desperate shortage of quality housing stock, but also reduces unemployment through investment in that workforce. We must provide tax abatements for affordable housing developers. The coterminous increase in wealthy and poor families in Philadelphia over the last decade or so, and the subsequent demand for housing has not been met with a sufficient supply of homes that meet the needs of both economic groups. Specifically, the housing demands for the growing class of low to moderate income families have not been met with an adequate supply of homes. The success of the tax abatement program that the city has highlights the local economic potential that exists to help meet the housing demands of all Philadelphians, not just the wealthy. Given the incredible savings realized by private market housing developments through tax abatements, the city and the state should push for further mechanism for developers to contribute to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Another option is to require developers benefiting from the abatement to make units within their market rate developments available to low-income families. Further, the city should consider revising the tax abatement period for affordable housing from 10 to 20 years, which could be extended to 30 years for multifamily affordable housing developers. Doing so will provide much-needed incentives and allow affordable housing owners to recoup the high cost of construction, something that could spur investment in essential building upgrades and system replacement when renovating affordable multifamily buildings. The dichotomy of increasing wealth and poverty and its impacts on housing in the city is reflected in where Philadelphians are employed. Many low-income Philadelphians commute to the suburbs for minimum wages in hospitality and in the retail sectors. Job growth in the city comes from the health and education sectors, where education requirements are an obstacle for the majority of the city's low and moderate income families. Therefore, the housing demands for the workers employed in the city economic growth sectors are being met by the increased supply of middle to high income rentals in the expanding boundaries of Center City and Northern Liberties, while the supply of housing for low and moderate income families stagnates, causing a further concentration of poverty in the city's poorest neighborhoods in the North, West, and Lower Northeast. Let's re-envision accountability. Solving the city's housing problem requires pragmatism, accountability, and an honest discourse about socioeconomic dynamics. While we respect our fundamental obligation to help those who cannot help themselves, support must be linked to responsibility and be a means of improvement, not dependence. Public housing should be seen as a transition, not an end. Self-sufficiency strategies and targeted approach that links assistance with demonstrated personal responsibility are needed. That is, implementing appropriate work requirements for eligibility and admission, establishing hard caps on the total amount of assistance one receives. There must be accountability for residents, service providers, management and government bureaucracies, and yes, for me as well, as the head of PHA. We must also ensure that scarce resources reach those most in need, like homeless veterans, the elderly, disabled, victims of crime and domestic violence. Accountability can take many forms. PHA is committed to working with our city and non-profit partners to share data, improve coordination, and to better serve those in need. Our system of public housing has created a dependent class that remains in perpetual state of generational poverty. Reliance upon the government safety net has made families reluctant to take even the very basic steps to pull themselves up for fear of losing the support of a system that reinforces their very condition. This creates skepticism for a policy that has failed to deliver decent and safe housing, has increasingly high cost, and has created enclaves characterized by blight, crime, and concentrated poverty. While the affordable housing challenges in Philadelphia may appear daunting and in some ways insurmountable, the fact is that many jurisdictions across the country face similar challenges and with creativity and commitment create paths to success. Significant progress is possible, and with the support and advocates of affordable housing, unlike you, this committee, much can be accomplished. As I discussed earlier, PHA cannot overcome the challenges alone. The state of seemingly permanent gridlock at the federal levels calls for action from local and state governments and community-based private and philanthropic organizations. Now is the time to develop the financial tools to build a supply of affordable housing in Philadelphia and to preserve the existing stock. PHA is ready to provide its expertise, its resources, to ensure that all Philadelphians are given the opportunity to live, work, and play in safe and prosperous neighborhoods, making our city the treasure that it should be. I want to thank you, the committee, for continuing to provide PHA with opportunities to speak on this important topic. It is an honor, and I look forward to working with you to address this key housing issue. I'd be happy to answer whatever questions the members may have.
Thank you both very much, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you, Mr. Jeremiah, for all that's happening with Philadelphia Housing Authority. Councilman Greenlee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, I know there's a lot of people who want to speak today, but Ms. Long, I think I asked this at the budget, but I just want to be clear. The Basic Systems Repair Program, you say you've been able to keep kind of steady funding on that, which is great because I know that saves a lot of people homes. Has the request for that program increased over the years, or?
I brought Michael Kuntz with
Okay.
the VSRB. I anticipated a question.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Coons.
Good afternoon. How are you? The program over the last 3 or 4 years has remained...
Excuse me, please identify
I'm sorry,
yourself.
my name is Michael Kuntz. I'm Executive Vice President, Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation. The demand over the last 3 or 4 years has remained relatively stable.
About the same. And I know there's I guess a threshold, you would say, where if a property is determined to just be too expensive to repair, that you know those people aren't eligible for a program. Would you have any idea, or do you have any records of how many people that might be?
No, I don't have any idea. I really don't have an idea, but I can do the research and get the
If you
numbers
could get
to you
that to the
this
chair,
week.
just be interesting. And again, I'm not blaming. I know resources are scarce, and maybe there's some properties that just can't be rehabbed. But I'm just wondering how many that might be.
Okay,
you know?
generally, just so you know, we anticipate more than 18,000, spending more than 18,000.
Right.
We generally don't tackle the job,
No, I understand. And
but I'll get you that number.
okay, if you could. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very, very much. And as we call forward our next panel, let me thank those who have worked hard on this issue. Herb Wetzel, our housing director, for all of council and the president. Certainly from my office, Anjali Chinani, who, in addition to working for her PhD, has brought some graduate students from Temple University who are working in public health with her today. We thank you all for coming as well. Our next panel and we thank Janae, who's an intern with council, who's going to help us moving forward. Thank you all, and all other members who have worked hard on this issue. Panel 2, New Sources of Revenue, Beth McConnell, Philadelphia Association of CDCs, Andy Frischkopf, Lisk, and Liz Hirsch, Housing Alliance, Pennsylvania. Thank you all for your time and your efforts. We appreciate you. Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record and then make your statement.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairwoman Blackwell, Councilman Greenlee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and Councilwoman Blackwell for leading the efforts on these hearings and for your decades of advocacy on behalf of the homeless and affordable housing.
Thank you.
And Councilman Greenlee for your work last year to increase the revenue to the Housing Trust Fund by $750,000. We appreciate all of your work. I've submitted longer written testimony. I'll abbreviate and shorten verbally.
Thank you.
I want to start by saying that PACDC, I'm sorry, my name is Beth McConnell, the Policy Director at the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. I want to start by saying that PACDC wants to urge Council to work with the next administration to create a long-term strategic housing plan that sets ambitious goals for truly meeting our city's housing needs, which of course, as we've heard in previous hearings, is massive. Council is already making progress with the passage of Resolution 140732 and Bill number 140721 from the Law and Government Committee on Friday. If fully approved, the legislation, among many other things, would require the creation of a strategic housing plan, and we applaud Council President Clark for championing this. And while it's unrealistic to expect that the city can find the resources to meet our city's demand for affordable homes immediately and fully, we can do much better right now. And that's why PACDC is urging Council to pass legislation to at least double dedicated revenue to the Housing Trust Fund to $25 million per year. And I'll focus the remainder of my testimony on potential sources of revenue that could be investigated to do this. Now, PACDC is not advocating that any one of these particular sources is the best way to generate the revenue. We offer these ideas and encourage Council and the administration to fully investigate whether or not they make sense for Philadelphia. Some of these ideas might require state enabling or state authorizing legislation or opinions from experts on how they can be implemented under a proper legal framework. First, we think it's really worth looking at existing revenue line items related to housing that are projected to grow, some portion of which could be dedicated to the Housing Trust Fund. Since there is a clear connection between a stronger housing market, stronger tax revenue to the city, and greater housing cost burdens on our low-income residents, there's a case to be made to direct some of those resources back to affordable homes. Between 2016 and 2020, about 10,800 properties, real estate tax abatements are set to expire. This is projected to bring in an additional $66 million cumulatively between FY16 and FY20 for the city's portion of the real estate tax that excludes the school district's portion. Similarly, the realty transfer tax revenue is projected to grow and could serve as another source of revenue for the Housing Trust Fund. The city could direct a portion of the growth and revenue from the tax without increasing it. This is exactly the model that the General Assembly is on track to approve to fund the Pennsylvania, the statewide Housing Trust Fund. For Philadelphia's portion, holding FY16 as the base year, the projected growth in revenue for FY17 to FY20 is $45.4 million. Council may also want to investigate if it's possible under the city charter to mandate that there is a certain level of funding each year to be made available to the Housing Trust Fund. For example, if it was required that the trust fund be funded at $25 million per year and the dedicated sources of revenue only produce $20 million, the administration would need to pull the $5 million shortfall from the general fund. The District of Columbia City Council passed a resolution there calling for a minimum of $100 million per year to their trust fund, half of which comes from their dedicated revenue stream, and the other half comes from the general fund. We also urge Council to consider a requirement that all housing or mixed-use development projects that are awarded some form of public subsidy be required to create affordable units on site in exchange for the public's investment. Council has regularly and successfully pushed for public benefits for commercial projects such as labor agreements, equal opportunity plans, living wage and benefit standards. And of course, must acknowledge Councilman Good for his leadership in that area. We recommend that some mechanism be created to negotiate a reasonable number of affordable units and any projects that include housing and receive a public subsidy. Many cities have also put in place development linkage fees, typically on newly constructed commercial or multifamily developments. You need to do nexus studies to establish the connection between development and an increased demand for affordable homes, and to quantify where to set the fee, the linkage fee, on a per square foot basis. In Boston, they set it at about $8.34 per square foot on new developments that exceed 100,000 square feet. Seattle is looking at a range of anywhere from $5 to $22 per square foot, depending on where the project is built. And we think if Philadelphia continues to give developers of all projects a generous 10-year property tax abatement as we do now, a linkage fee might be one way to generate revenue for affordable homes from large, profitable market rate developments that probably don't need a tax abatement to be economically viable and can afford to return something to the public. If an average linkage fee of $3, just $3 per square foot, were already in place in Philadelphia, the city could have raised more than $30 million as a result of projects just in Center City that were completed in 2013 or in the pipeline to be completed in 2017, and then excludes any government, nonprofit, or public space development. It would have been about an average of $6 million per year. Council could also consider various fees as potential sources of revenue for affordable homes. Our rental license fee right now is just about $50 per year per unit. If that were increased by $10 or $15 and there was very strong compliance from landlords, it could generate $2.5 to $3.7 million per year with a very minimal impact on renters. But PACDC would first recommend that the administration make data publicly available on compliance in order to understand whether increased enforcement is necessary before this could be considered a viable source of revenue. Just to share really quickly a couple examples of from some other cities. In Louisville, Kentucky, affordable home advocates are pushing to increase their insurance premium tax by 1% and earmark that for affordable homes. They estimate it would add about 63 cents per month to a typical homeowner's policy and generate $10 million per year in their city. Several cities also charge hotel taxes to generate revenue for affordable homes. Low-wage workers of the hotels need affordable places to call homes, and the revenue generated could also help address street homelessness downtown. These types of taxes are in place in San Francisco, Long Beach, California, and Columbus, Ohio. While we already have a hotel tax dedicated to tourism marketing, if the city assessed a $2 surcharge, just a flat surcharge per stay on hotel room bookings, that would generate about $5 million per year for affordable homes and homelessness prevention. Finally, it's just important to remember what a valuable tool the Philadelphia Land Bank can be in better meeting affordable home needs, especially in stronger market neighborhoods. Developers need the city typically to grant them free land or land at nominal value in order to reduce the use of scarce public subsidies to purchase the land for affordable homes. And through the Land Bank's unique powers of property acquisition, it can gain access to properties in stronger market neighborhoods for the purpose of affordable home development, so our low-income residents can have access to strong amenities. These are just a few ideas for how Philadelphia can advance equitable development by capturing a modest amount of additional revenue from a growing, strengthening city in the service of our low-income residents. By investing in the building and repair of affordable homes and homelessness prevention for our struggling neighbors, we provide them with the stability and security necessary to address other challenges related to health, education, and economic security. Our lowest-income Philadelphians are worth the investment. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Thank you for your suggestions as to what we can do. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Blackwell, Councilman Greenlee. I am Andrew Frischkopf, Executive Director of Philadelphia LISC. I would like to present testimony about increasing resources to expand the production and preservation of affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia. First, I would like to commend Councilwoman Blackwell for her ongoing leadership and constant vigilance as a champion of affordable housing. I would also like to thank council staff for helping all of us to learn what we can from other cities and for promoting our own local best practices for affordable housing. I would also like to thank all of the public servants, citizens, and advocates in the room today who have taken the time out to advocate for this important issue for all of Philadelphia. And I would just like to note the presence of Andrea Ponser, LISC's federal policy expert on affordable housing, who has come up from our DC office today to be in the gallery. I've been asked to share information about how other cities provide local support for affordable housing. As background, please allow me to share some information about LISC. Philadelphia LISC is the local office of the Local Initiative Support Corporation, a national nonprofit community development organization that helps economically distressed neighborhoods become healthy, sustainable communities. LISC combines corporate, government, and philanthropic resources to help community-based organizations revitalize underserved neighborhoods. Since 1980, LISC has invested $14.7 billion in 30 cities and hundreds of communities across the United States, developing and preserving 330,000 affordable homes and apartments, and hundreds of schools, daycare centers, health centers, and sports fields. Locally, LISC has invested $350 million to build or preserve 7,800 affordable homes and apartments and to develop 1.7 million square feet of retail, community, and educational space. Most local LISC offices are active partners with their cities, and most try to align LISC resources with city funds. As such, I wanted to share information about those offices, how their cities have chosen to fund affordable housing. First, it is worth reporting that the grass is not always greener in other cities. Some large cities, such as Cincinnati, Detroit, and Phoenix, do not dedicate local funds for affordable housing. They rely on state and federal funds. Others, like Indianapolis and San Diego, have dedicated local funds that generate less than $3 million annually for affordable housing. These cities look to Philadelphia's Housing Trust Fund as a model that they would like to adopt. On the other hand, as Beth has indicated, there are other cities that have made affordable housing a high priority for the use of local funds. Boston, Chicago, District of Columbia, Houston, New York, San Francisco, and Seattle all have models that Philadelphia can learn from and consider replicating. For the most part, these cities have significant levels of market rate development, and they have linked funding for affordable housing to private sector real estate activity. Boston uses 2 dedicated fees to generate approximately $18 million annually. First, as Beth has mentioned, property owners of large commercial developments pay a linkage fee to the Neighborhood Housing Trust Fund. This generates approximately $7 million per year. Second, 15% of all units constructed in developments larger than 10 units must be made affordable, or else developers must pay fees in lieu of construction. These fees generate approximately $11 million for affordable housing every year. Chicago has a number of local housing tools. First, it's to note the city has its own allocation of federal low-income housing tax credits, which generates approximately $65 million in equity for affordable rental housing. Chicago also issues about $60 billion in tax-exempt financing that supports development of rental housing through the use of 4% tax credits. In addition to these innovative uses of federal resources, Chicago raises up to $30 million annually through tax increment financing and general funds. And finally, Chicago's Affordable Requirements Ordinance requires housing developers in high-income areas to include affordable units or pay a fee similar to the Boston fee. Some developers choose to include affordable units in their buildings, but most pay the fees, which total about $20 million per year. The District of Columbia has a housing production trust fund that is funded through a 15% set-aside of deed recording fees and transfer taxes. As Beth has indicated, these fees raise about $50 million a year for construction and preservation of affordable housing. Last year, the District of Columbia appropriated almost $30 million of general funds to supplement the dedicated funds. And this year, they've set a goal of $50 million in additional general fund revenue to create a full $100 million housing trust fund. In Texas, certain types of tax increment financing zones are required to set aside a third of their annual revenue for affordable housing. For the city of Houston, this now amounts to approximately $14 million per year, or roughly twice the city's home allocation from HUD. The state imposes very few restrictions on the funding, hence it is very flexible. Most recently, Houston has used these funds for multifamily and permanent supportive housing. San Francisco has committed $20 million annually in general funds set aside for affordable housing, with a plan to increase this to $50 million over the next 30 years. This set-aside is primarily funded with business registration fees. Annual business registration fees currently start at $90 per registration. In Seattle, a property tax levy generates approximately $20 million annually. The levy comes at a cost of $65 per year to Seattle homeowners. Revenues are deposited into the city's low-income housing fund and designated for rental production and preservation, operating and maintenance, home buyer assistance, acquisition and opportunity loans, and rental assistance. I've saved New York for last because no city really likes to compare itself to New York. Its Housing Development Corporation issued bonds totaling $1.1 billion annually. New York's tax levy capital raises about $665 million annually. The city pension fund lends approximately $100 million annually to affordable housing projects. The Battery Park City Authority fund generates approximately $19.5 million annually for affordable housing. And City Council capital funds total $18 million annually for affordable housing. Currently, Mayor de Blasio is proposing additional tools and resources for affordable housing, including strengthening tax incentive and inclusionary housing programs and increasing the pension fund commitment to housing. While it's tempting to focus on the individual tools and mechanisms that other cities employ, the truth is that they don't matter as much as community and political will. The first, most important step is to decide that affordable housing is important enough in Philadelphia that we agree that we must invest more funds tomorrow than we did today. The second step is to determine which funding tools will work best here in Philadelphia. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. I'm happy to discuss further how other cities support housing and what types of housing they prioritize.
Thank you very much. I see why they don't mention New York, my goodness. Thank you. Ms. Hirsch?
My chair is too short. Can you do something about that? Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm Liz Hirsch. I'm the executive. I can't raise the chair. I can't reach the darn. I feel like a little kid here. I'm Liz Hirsch. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania. We are the statewide affordable housing advocacy organization. Can you hear me?
Raise your mic.
That's good.
Is that better? Okay. The Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania has, over the last 10 years, generated about $500 million in new public resources for housing, homelessness, and community development, and done the research, education, and outreach that have resulted in about 12 new laws being enacted, the result of which has to, in some cases, raise property values by about a third. I want to talk very briefly about two opportunities that the city could use working together with the state to get new resources to address particularly homelessness and chronic homelessness. Very often, as an affordable housing advocate, we come with hands out asking for something, begging. Today, I think we can come with a proposed solution that would actually help the state. The state has a very serious budget problem, in case you hadn't heard. There are three big drivers of the state's structural deficit. The state has a responsibility to educate, medicate, and incarcerate. And so healthcare costs, corrections costs, and education are three of the biggest drivers of the state budget. Homelessness is one of the factors that drives excessive spending at the state level. And the failure to provide housing opportunities for the most vulnerable, lowest income people as an alternative to corrections and as an alternative to emergency rooms, psychiatric hospitals, and other much more expensive systems is actually causing the state more money. So there's two real imminent opportunities that the city could advance working together with the state. The first is to expand Medicaid, to expand the Medicaid plan to provide supportive services to people in permanent supportive housing. As you probably well know, there are many permanent supportive housing providers in Philadelphia. Project Home is probably one of the best known, Bethesda Project, there's others. Permanent supported housing is very simply that people who are chronically homeless, either experiencing chronic homelessness or at risk of chronic homelessness, get a rent subsidy and supportive services, either in one facility or tenant-based out in the community. In other states, what they have been able to do is to expand the Medicaid plan, the state's Medicaid plan, to provide more supportive services to people in supportive housing. Now, it's very technical, but it's totally doable. And what's the benefit is that it reduces the utilization of people in those systems of the public benefits. People who are experiencing chronic homelessness tend to have more behavioral health problems, substance abuse problems, and health problems. And they use the most expensive systems because they don't have stable housing and the services. When they get supportive housing, they're able to reduce their utilization of those more expensive systems. So the recommendation is to do what states like Washington are doing, Maine, which is to work with the state to expand the state's Medicaid plan to allow for home-based or tenant-based supportive services to help chronically homeless people remain stable, healthier, and therefore use less of the public benefits. So this would transfer the burden financially to the federal Medicaid program through the Affordable Care Act. I think the current administration is very open to this. They have to reopen the state's Medicaid plan now anyway. This is exactly the time. The Philadelphia delegation is in a very powerful position with the new administration. This is the time for City Council to be working with the Philadelphia delegation and working with the administration to expand the state's Medicaid plan to allow services for chronically homeless people to be provided in a site-based setting. The second opportunity is through corrections. Well, the corrections budget, as you all know, is several $billion every year at the state level. And one of the things that happens is that people come out of the prisons without a place to go. People who are released from prison into a homeless shelter are 75% more likely to recidivate. And people who come out of prison into a permanent supported housing setting are 2.5 times less likely to recidivate. So in other words, when we reinvest in people coming out of prison and going into permanent supported housing, again, where they have those services and affordable rent, actually makes communities safer. So that when we actually help people make a successful transition, especially when they're still in parole, so they have the supervision, it actually saves the corrections system money. It's certainly better for them, and it makes the community safer because they're stable and less likely to commit another crime or to recidivate and go back to prison. Each year in Pennsylvania, about 1,000 people stay 3 months past their parole date at a cost of $116 thereabouts per day. For $25 a day or thereabouts, they could have permanent supported housing. So we urge you to, City Council, again, to work with your delegation, to work with the Corrections Department, to expand justice reinvestment so that people who are leaving the system have the opportunity to live stably, to get the services they need. It's certainly going to save taxpayer money and make the city safer. It will improve their outcomes as well, and we're already spending the money. In both of these cases, we're spending more money by using approaches that are actually less humane. So they're more expensive, they don't work as well. So now is the time, to take advantage of the financial crisis in Harrisburg, to turn the system upside down, do what's better for people, do what's better for communities, and actually save taxpayer money. So for once, in addressing chronic homelessness, we actually have the opportunity to solve a problem for the state, which is to save them money by also doing what's right. In closing, I just want to say that the other opportunity we have is to advance the State Housing Trust Fund. This, like all the other solutions, is not a panacea. It's going to take many, many strategies, all of everybody working together just as it has to end our homelessness problem and to make sure that we have everybody has a home within their reach. But if City Council could endorse or pass a resolution in support of the State Housing Trust Fund and having it enacted this year, that would be one more piece of the puzzle. This can be done in a way that's revenue neutral by redirecting state realty transfer tax, not the local portion, future growth in the state realty transfer tax back into the state trust fund. Again, this is one small piece of the puzzle, but together with all the other solutions, like those that Andy and Beth have proposed and Kelvin and that OHCD is talking about, could together help more Philadelphians who right now are struggling with unstable and unsafe housing to have a better life, to be contributing members of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All of you do a stellar job, and we really, really appreciate it. Are there questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Panel 3, Sources of Revenue, continued. Thomas Earl, Liberty Resources, Nora Liptash, Women's Community Revitalization Project. Thank you both very much. Feel free to give us your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Blackwell. My name is Nora Lichtash, and I work with the Women's Community Revitalization Project. Thank you. Sorry. My partner's pushing my chair around, I'm not sure. So the organization I work for is also known as WCRP, and we've been working for more than 28 years to make sure that women and our families are fully present, meaning that we can be seen and our voice can be heard in the decisions that affect us, especially around our need for affordable housing. We've built or rehabbed about 250 homes. They're beautiful, they're really beautiful, but just as important as developing affordable, accessible homes is the work we've done to support hundreds of leaders to fight and advocate for policies that are equitable and fair. One of these policies is the legislation that created the Housing Trust Fund, and I want to thank you for sponsoring that legislation more than 10 years ago. It's really important, but I think now it's clear, and that's why we're having the hearing, that it doesn't generate enough resources to really meet the need, and we have data to show that the needs are across the board in every council district in the city. WCRP is a proud member of the Philadelphia Coalition of Affordable Communities, my t-shirt. And are there folks from the Affordable Housing Coalition in the audience? Can I hear it? Yes. We're a powerful, intentional coalition of 36 community, I don't want to leave anyone out, community, labor, faith, urban agriculture, and disability rights groups. And we've all joined together to figure out how to grow the Housing Trust Fund. We're the people who are most directly affected by the affordable housing crisis, and we're the people without access to fresh food, and all of us know that the time for action is now. We're also clear that development's needed in Philly. We need it so that our tax base increases, we can afford to fund our schools and our services. But there's no question that gentrification and unchecked market rate development causes displacement. Our coalition recently released a report, and I think I gave you a copy, that outlines our stories and critical data, clearly proving that the problem of residents, businesses, institutions like churches and child care centers, gardens, urban farms have been getting pushed out of our neighborhoods. It's real. Some data from the report shows that in parts of your district between 2000 and 2012, the housing costs went up and salaries or incomes went down. So in West Philly, income decreased by 11%, and the cost of buying a house increased by 98%. I know you know this. In the neighborhood where I work in North Philly, income decreased by 6%, and the cost to buy a house increased by 200%. And those changes leave more than 1/3 of all homeowners and more than half of all renters in our city what's called a cost burden. They're paying more than they can afford for their homes. So I want to repeat that more than 1/3 of all homeowners and more than half of all tenants in Philly are paying more than they can afford for their housing costs. It's a lot, right? The increase in development gives us an opportunity not just to add to the city's tax base, but to generate new resources to address the problem of displacement. Our researchers have determined we could generate $12 million per year for the Housing Trust Fund, and the Coalition for Affordable Communities as it is proposing that we raise this $12 million through anti-speculation legislation. I want to say slowly because it can seem complicated, but it's not. We would increase the realty transfer payment by 1.5% on houses that are sold twice within 24 months. Some people call this flipping, but that additional 1.5% would only be paid on the second sale if it occurs within 2 years. And that would effectively double the money that comes into the trust fund because we didn't even get $12 million this year. I think it's clear that now is the time. While this new development is happening, it's happening right now. So our city needs to take action to curb displacement that's hurting us and is hurting our communities. We can't let this moment pass. So we call on City Council to enact anti-speculation legislation so we can have development that includes us all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Blackwell. My name is Tom Earl, and I'm the President and CEO of Liberty Resources. And similar to Nora and the Women's Community Revitalization Project, Liberty Resources is proudly a member of the Philadelphia Coalition for Affordable Communities. And our particular interest is to address the housing crisis for people with disabilities and seniors, including folks with disabilities who are deaf or have other sensory disabilities. The problem of housing for this population is really compounded in that it's not just an affordability issue, it's also an accessibility issue for many of the people that Liberty Resources works with who have physical disabilities and use wheelchair to ambulate. We have also testified at the prior hearing on April 27th, where we discussed the nature of the housing crisis in Philadelphia, and that is very well documented now throughout the testimony of a number of people who have presented before you and the committee on housing and homelessness. We have supported a couple of specific approaches that the city could undertake to improve this, which we know is supported by not only Liberty, Disabled in Action of Pennsylvania, and the Philadelphia Coalition for Affordable Communities, to really take a citywide approach. And while we agree that poverty is deeply rooted and is really more than just a housing issue, as PHA has testified today with their executive director, Mr. Jeremiah. But over the many years that we've worked on accessible housing, we've really come to learn that a fundamental aspect of living in any community is the basic human right to safe housing in a neighborhood that you would like to live in. Kids cannot go to school if they don't have a stable household and an apartment that they can come home to each day. People with disabilities, if they're not in nursing homes like Philadelphia Nursing Home, cannot become part-time or full-time wage earners and live in the community in accessible apartments. So therefore, it really is fundamentally important for City Council, the Office of Housing Community Development, and the new mayor to understand that stable, affordable housing is really a keystone to the city's future. and something that must be addressed on the front end before we get to other causes of poverty. We know that the cost of living in Philadelphia has risen. We know that there's gentrification going on. And one of the mantras, or the key mantra of our coalition, is development without displacement. And we are confident that if it's carefully designed, development can take place in Philadelphia in a way that is not only attractive to higher wage earners who want to move into the city, but also acknowledges the growing need of working class families, low-income families who work very hard, and people and seniors with disabilities to be able to stay in the neighborhoods that they've been living in for a long time. Housing preservation is a key aspect in addition to the housing development that we need going forward. The Housing Trust Fund, which we all worked on very hard through the Affordable Housing Coalition over 10 years ago, and Councilwoman Blackwell, we thank you for your leadership on that initiative, and Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown as well. But that Housing Trust Fund, while it has been incredibly effective at increasing housing options, in particular for people with disabilities, it simply needs more money. It's like a small Band-Aid on a large wound. We know it works effectively, so as one of the first steps, we would really like to see legislation to amend the Housing Trust Fund under your leadership that would allow an additional $12 million or $12.5 million to be pumped into the Housing Trust Fund through a very fair anti-speculation house flipping tax transfer fee of 1.5%. On flipped houses that only applies to properties that are flipped within 2 years. This would have a modest impact on developers, if any, or I would say a de minimis impact on developers, and properties sold less than 2 years after being purchased would be a source of direct revenue for the Housing Trust Fund. A $12 million infusion of additional funding for the Housing Trust Fund could create 240 units of newly constructed affordable rental apartments that would be accessible to people with disabilities. This would be a huge help, not only to many of the folks in the audience today who are a member of the coalition, but also the Philadelphia Housing Authority that simply cannot do this work on their own any longer. They need creative, innovative ways to assist them in meeting the housing needs of Philadelphians. The additional money would also support 150 existing homeowners seeking critical home repairs through basic home system repair, and 112 home modifications to assist people with disabilities and seniors stay in their apartments or homes as they acquire age-related disabilities. The additional funding into the Housing Trust Fund would also provide 240 grants for capital improvements and infrastructure for community gardens and food-producing green spaces. Urban agriculture is a great source of part-time and full-time employment, and also healthy food for many low-income families that will tie directly into improved health care. In closing, I'd like to mention a couple other innovative approaches to look at. We know that the City of Philadelphia operates one of the largest nursing homes in the state, Philadelphia Nursing Home on Girard Avenue. The use of nursing homes are very expensive. Many counties throughout the state have unloaded these very expensive operations. And the money that could be derived from a property or the buildings on Philadelphia Nursing Home has been speculated to be as high as $23 million. We routinely move people out of Philadelphia nursing home, and folks keep putting people in. So it's really a catch-22 situation. It's a cash cow that the city should really unload and would be a huge benefit to as a source of affordable housing throughout that district and other districts in the city. The other mechanism that's a possibility is the HUD regulation that allows HUD to require the local housing authority to increase the number of housing units for people with disabilities based on the U.S. Census. And the U.S. Census, as we testified on April 27th, shows that more than 13% of low-income families in Philadelphia are households with people with disabilities. And that would allow HUD to require PHA to increase the accessible housing requirement from 10% or 5% to 10% to 13.2%. And every percentage point helps in this regard. The last thing I wanted to mention, or two last things, and I promise they are the last things. I keep saying that. One is the issue of visitability. Councilwoman Blackwell, you have been a champion on this issue for many years. We have it in the Housing Trust Fund. It's a very minor requirement that allows housing development to have a minimal amount of access so that somebody with a disability can visit a friend or family who lives in a newly developed apartment or home. Requiring the visitability ordinance to be citywide on all housing development is long overdue and something that would be very helpful. And we also heard from the statewide housing coalition about supportive housing. While that does help in some instances, we know that Medicaid expansion is now going to become a reality in Pennsylvania under the leadership of Governor Wolf. But another mechanism, the Community First Choice option, which is an aspect of the Affordable Care Act, and Pennsylvania could implement this, and it would require that personal assistance services, home care, basic home care, would go from a complicated waiver process to an entitlement that seniors and people with disabilities could rapidly access to live independently in their own homes and apartments. That concludes my testimony. We thank you for this opportunity to testify on the solution side of this, and we're ready to roll up our sleeves together with you and the many members of the coalition to work with the new mayor and make the city of Philadelphia an affordable city for everyone.
Thank you very much. Any questions? We thank you both for the work you've done over the years. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
You're
Can
welcome.
they ask us any questions? We ran away. Sorry. Do we have any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you very much.
So maybe you'll sponsor the legislation. We would love it.
Thank you. Thank you. We will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you well. Thank you both very much. Panel 4, Equity for Preservation/Rehabilitation, Kiki Bolander, Healthy Row House Project, Jeff Allegretti, Innova Services Corp., and John Cromer, Planning and Development Consultant. Thank you for your time and effort.
This is a low chair. Thank you, Chairwoman Blackwell, Councilman Greenlee, and thank you to all of you who care enough to be here. I'm Kiki Bolander, principal at Bolander Architects, chair of the Design Advocacy Group, a board member of the Philadelphia chapter of the American Institute of Architects, but today I'm here to speak on behalf of the Healthy Row House Project. This project began in November 2014, designed to find ways to repair and preserve critical existing affordable housing, to keep people in their own homes, and to make those people healthier and make their homes healthier for them. Our goal is to find a way to repair 5,000 homes per year, to improve conditions for low-income renters and homeowners. These repairs would have wide-ranging social and economic consequences, as Liz Hirsch so eloquently described. Each has the potential to tap into a different funding stream and to save money in a different area of the budget. In healthcare, reducing water damage in buildings and removing mold would significantly lower the hospital admissions for asthma attacks. This has attracted the attention of major foundations in the healthcare area. Displacement. Keeping people in the homes they may have lived in for decades could reduce conflict when new development happens in neighborhoods and maintain the human and physical character of those neighborhoods that we love so much. Energy and water conservation. Making buildings more energy efficient and fixing the pipes will make them more economical for the residents to maintain. Job creation and support for small business, either as transitional work, work for returning citizens, or training in a specific trade that will benefit local individuals and the neighborhood as a whole. In education, giving children a good start from birth to age 5 will make them more ready for school with a better chance of success. We've been studying various funding mechanisms currently in use in other cities to repair buildings for homeowners and for rental properties. Let me share 4 of these, and you can find much more detail at our website, healthyrowhouse.org. First, for homeowners in neighborhoods where the properties are increasing in value, several U.S. counties offer deferred loans to low and moderate income homeowners. These require no monthly payments but are due in full when the owner sells or transfers ownership of the home. For example, King County, the Seattle area, and Washington offers this kind of deferred loan of up to $25,000 for home repair with a 0% interest rate. St. Paul, Minnesota has a similar program, permitting forgiveness of the entire amount if the resident stays in the home for 30 years or longer. Genesee County, Ohio offers deferred loans and forgives a portion of the loan for low-income householders. Second, a revolving loan fund from investor banks for rental units. In Chicago, the Community Investment Corporation has made 1,900 loans totaling over $1 billion over 30 years. At an average of 4,000 units per year, they have provided affordable housing through renovation for more than 125,000 people. In April 2014, they launched a new loan program for distressed 1 to 4 unit buildings to be targeted to a 32 square block area. They found that these small buildings, like our triplex townhouses, provide almost half of the affordable rentals in many Chicago neighborhoods. Third, Detroit has zero-interest home repair loans. On March 24, 2015, the City of Detroit, with LISC and the Bank of America, unveiled the Detroit Zero-Interest Home Repair Loan Program, which will provide $8 million in financing for eligible homeowners looking to patch roofs, replace windows, upgrade plumbing, and address structural and safety issues. Finally, Baltimore utilities provide a $50 million fund. In Baltimore, when Exelon bought the utility Constellation Energy, the utility agreed to make available $50 million to the city government for projects to permanently lower energy bills through energy efficiency work. The city brought together all service providers into a single referral network and significantly improved the number of homes being helped. Our research so far suggests that the city needs a menu of choices for different situations, for landlords, for low-income owners who live in areas of increasing value, and grants for those owners who cannot afford even a loan. In 2015, we hope the Healthy Row House Project will be researching these and other funding mechanisms to see what would work for Philadelphia. If, and I'd like to say when, these programs start, the difficult decisions will be house by house, where repair needs will be extensive and varied. That's the tricky part. I won't say the money is the easy part, but it's doable. We hope for the Healthy Row House Project to be here as a resource for you as you do the hard work of creating a robust housing policy for Philadelphia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Allegretti.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Allegretti. I'm president of Innova Services Corporation. I formed Innova in 1997 to really continue my public sector career, work in affordable housing preservation and development. Innova has provided project management services for affordable housing developers and CDCs, contributing to the creation of nearly 10,000 units of durable, energy-efficient, affordable housing valued at nearly $2 billion. 6 years ago, I formed Innova Redevelopment to focus on the development of affordable for-sale housing on the blocks surrounding our offices in Point Breeze. Since then, we have rehabbed and built more than 70 affordable homes from formerly vacant houses and vacant lots, a significant portion of which was done without subsidies or with only the subsidy of a nominally priced land from the city. That latter work was made possible by some truly creative thinking on the part of this body, the City Council. And I'll say it even though he's not sitting there, our District Councilman, Kenyatta Johnson, who was a yeoman in this effort, and in partnership with the Redevelopment Authority, converting city vacant land holdings that were once thought of only as a city liability into investment assets that encourage the development of affordable housing, especially in gentrifying neighborhoods like ours, where rapidly rising housing prices put growing pressures on home affordability for working families. But that work is not the focus of my testimony today. I mentioned the land as subsidy effort so that it may serve as an analog for another way to find embedded assets in another group of properties that have also historically been seen only as a liability, the city's vast inventory of owner-occupied housing. Tens of thousands of homes owned and occupied by low-income families and seniors are in need of major repairs, and their need has overwhelmed the city's home repair programs, creating waiting lists that extends into the next decade. I know this problem intimately. I once ran a nonprofit in North Philadelphia that fixed heaters for thousands of low-income homeowners each year. And during the Rendell administration, I was the director of basic systems repair and weatherization programs with my boss at my side here. Nearly 2 decades of work and service to low-income homeowners has had a profound and lasting impact on my view of the affordable housing problem in the city. I've seen housing conditions in occupied homes that rival the third world, and I often lamented that these unconscionable conditions never seem to rise to the same level of public policy importance as new development deals. When I was running these programs, I used to joke that we should have a press conference and a ribbon cutting every time we installed a new furnace or put on a new roof, thinking that perhaps then we might get better attention to this pervasive problem. The need for critical health and life safety repairs, major building systems repairs, energy improvements, the extensive exterior preservation are all commonplace in this aging housing stock. If we wanted to create a housing program that had the most impact on the lives of occupants and the health of our neighborhoods, we would figure out a way to make these homes into long-term, stable, maintenance-free, energy-efficient housing. But how could we ever fund such a large-scale effort? Well, let me challenge you to imagine the collective amount of bankable equity that is embedded in the vast inventory of occupied housing. In the same way the City Council and the PRA ingeniously altered the view of the city's vacant land liability into a cache of future development sites that did not require federal subsidies, it might also help to look at this vast supply of existing occupied housing as potential future affordable housing development sites. By that I mean, if 30, 40, or 50 houses were bundled as a single redevelopment project, as a deal, to use developer parlance, and fixed up into new housing from funds extracted from the equity embedded in them, that effort could effectively create a new, multi-unit, tightly focused, scattered site redevelopment of housing right where the deteriorated old units now sit, providing the occupants of those homes new units without the need to relocate to new unfamiliar environs. Even the most robust scope of work of this kind of work would only cost a fraction of the cost of new housing. And best of all, these rehab units would have a profound stabilizing effect on the neighborhood as a whole. And it all could be done without the need for federal housing subsidies. Lest you think that this is some pie-in-the-sky idea, I should tell you that over the course of the past 6 months, I've been working with a small group of housing and finance experts to develop just such a strategy, one of whom is sitting to my right, of doing this home equity financed preservation at scale to leverage existing homeowner equity and future increases in equity to finance the cost of improving the conditions in the home to enable owner-occupants to remain in their home communities for the remainder of their lives if they so choose. The idea is to set up a program that more or less mimics the way low-income housing tax credits projects are administered, using private equity allocated and overseen by a finance agency, underwritten institution, in this case with FHA approval, and executed by capable CDCs and private developers. CDCs and developers would work under the direction of a program administrator, such as a community development finance institution that could provide bridge financings for the construction, as the equity proceeds are not released until the work is done to safeguard the borrower, and would verify the renovations as complete according to the scope of work agreed to at the initiation of the loan. In each neighborhood where this program is offered, a community partner, such as a CDC or faith-based institution that has gained the respect of community members, would be engaged to disseminate information and refer potential participants to an independent housing counseling agency authorized to participate in the program. A more robust outline of this model is being sent to HUD this week for its review and comment. Once HUD reviews the outline and provides its comment, and we hope approval, the intention is to broaden the pilot planning group to include advocates for seniors, legal experts on predatory lending practices, and potential community partners to serve as liaison with homeowners at the grassroots level. Thank you, Councilwoman Blackwell, for initiating these hearings on this important topic, and thank you both for your attention.
Thank you very much. And it gives me special pleasure to present a former head of housing and community development to you, Mr. John Cromer, Planning and Development Consultant.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councilman Greenlee, thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I just want to add a few comments to the testimony that you've already heard, which focuses, unlike a lot of the previous testimony, on housing preservation, keeping people in their homes. And as you are well aware, in every district, when you speak with people about affordable housing, there is some discussion about new development, but when you speak with homeowners, very frequently they will not say, I want a new house that's being built, even in this neighborhood. They just want to stay where they are and have the homes where they live in now made affordable and livable. And I'm really happy that to complement the discussion that you've heard previously of new public resources, there appear to be opportunities to leverage the strength of the private market in Philadelphia to do something about this issue. This isn't for everyone, but there's an opportunity to do something that didn't exist even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and I'm really glad that we can make this part of the discussion. Before speaking of this opportunity related to private sector resources, I just want to comment on the Basic Systems Repair Program and the accomplishments of that program. Clearly, as others have acknowledged, it's not enough and a lot more funding is needed, but I think it's really remarkable that year after year, Council has been ambitious about supporting a high level of funding for this program. The same is true of the housing counseling programs that, again, have been consistently funded at high levels. What you've done is really not the same as what happens in certain other cities where the priorities vary from year to year and from council district to council district. So I really want to congratulate you for funding two critically important programs so consistently and at such aggressively high levels. As you know, at the same time, there are problems with the Basic Systems Repair Program over and above the limitations of funding. The program in its current state, for most homeowners, will only fund one major system. The heater will be fixed and the program will move on to another house. The roof will be rebuilt or repaired, and that's all that will be done. Other repair needs are not going to be addressed. That's just the nature of the program, to deal with critical emergencies and to prevent abandonment in that way. But what that means is that a lot of repairs that are needed to sustain a home for a longer period of time don't get addressed, and that's just the reality that the program is addressing, and I wouldn't propose any alternative to that. Another sort of limitation of the program is that after receiving BSRP assistance, the homeowner can just leave, can sell the house. There is no deed restriction or restrictive covenant or anything of that type, and it would be way too expensive and administratively burdensome to talk about doing that, even if we thought that was a great idea. But the fact is that people receive repairs to their homes and may choose to move, and it's not clear whether the investment is being sustained over a long period of time to assist lower income households. What's happened during the past decade in particular is that, as you're aware, property values have increased substantially in every council district, in every real estate market in the city, in a remarkable way. And so what you've heard from the past two speakers have been recommendations for leveraging that increased equity that's now associated with many houses in Philadelphia, and possibly for some homeowners to use that equity to finance home repairs, not just the replacement or repair of one basic system, but a full rehabilitation of the home, including weatherization, and in some cases, the capitalization of a reserve fund to deal with maintenance needs in the future. Well, why would a homeowner want to do that? You know, why would a homeowner want to get into a reverse mortgage kind of situation that just paid for the home repairs? And again, this isn't for everyone, but some homeowners would like to see their houses remain livable for the rest of their lives, to see their homes weatherized and energy efficient. And for that group of homeowners, this could be a new resource that could do the whole job, not just a piecemeal job, and that would support the maintenance of that asset, that homeowner-occupied house, for a long-term period of time. Jeffrey Allegretti and Kiki Bolander and I and others have had some discussion of this idea of leveraging, and one of the first comments that frequently comes up is about reverse mortgages and reverse mortgage scams, and you're familiar with that, and that's an issue that we should all be concerned about. The only way to address that issue is by vetting any financing proposal, including the ones that have been under discussion so far with the housing counselors, with the intermediaries such as LISC and the Reinvestment Fund, with the legal services agencies and providers such as CLS, to see if there's a model that can be developed that's going to reduce or prevent fraud, and that can be authorized by the federal government through FHA, so that we don't run into that problem. There are scams involving home improvement loans, there are scams involving first mortgages, but that doesn't mean that we never engage in home improvement loans or first mortgages. We want to find a way to make this work well, and I think because of the knowledge of the people who are in this room and others whom you know, that we have an opportunity to do it right and have a good dialogue about this potential opportunity, and if this dialogue reaches a successful conclusion, to report back to you on the results. So thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce this.
Absolutely. Councilman Greenlee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cromer, real quick, you mentioned, I guess, the concern about the basic system program, that some people may get it and then sell the property. Have you seen much evidence of that? Because that's something I never heard before. Usually I hear just the opposite, that what you referenced about they take care of the major problem, but they still have more problems. So That, I hear that much more. In fact, I've never heard anybody just flipping a property if there's something.
I think your experience is probably more the norm, and the reason people apply and you have a waiting list is because people do want to stay in their properties. But because this was a question, I had the opportunity to work with a group of graduate students at Penn to look at a group of 75 cases that had been processed through BSRP during the 1990s, and to check and see who was still there, how many were still there. And this was in the so-called Graduate Hospital area, Southwest Center City, between South Street and Washington Avenue west of Broad. And the finding was that the ownership had changed about half the time during this period. And that may well be atypical. Tremendous changes were going on in Southwest Center City at that time. And if some of the homeowners moved out, because they decided the neighborhood was no longer for them, or they wanted to retire,
got too high,
or perhaps, then, that's their option. And I don't think that a rule should be instituted that says, you must stay here.
I was just wondering if there was a...
Yeah, I think your experience is probably more likely to be the norm, however.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, we thank you for those important statements. We'll announce at the end of this hearing that we're going to take all of this information, really study it carefully. We've received so much important information, and certainly your experience is invaluable. So we certainly may be in touch with you, many of you, over the summer, and we appreciate your work and your understanding and commitment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Panel 5, Unique Approaches and Cost Savings. Sandy Saltzman, New Kensington CDC, and Brad Copeland, Mount Airy, USA.
Do you want to go first, or you want me to? Okay. Good afternoon, Councilwoman Blackwell, Councilman Greenlee. Thank you for this opportunity. I am here to talk about...
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Sandy Salzman. I'm Executive Director from New Kensington Community Development Corporation, and I'm here to talk about a unique program that we are underway in the Fishtown area. As you probably are aware, Fishtown has undergone tremendous gentrification in the past few years, and we're very concerned about keeping people in the neighborhood as the neighborhood starts to change. I am a lifelong resident of Fishtown, and I'm a fourth-generation resident of Fishtown, and I want to see my children be able to stay in our neighborhood. So this program, we're calling it Awesome Town, and I've given you a picture of what it's supposed to look like, and then also the plan for the housing. And this is something we worked very closely with Councilman Clark, so I'm sorry that he had to leave, because he was very significant in helping us get this project through the neighborhood. It's 14 houses that's being built on land that we received from the Vacant Property Review Committee. And of the 14 houses, 4 of the houses are being subsidized by the other 10 houses. So we are working with the developer Post Green Housing and New Kensington CDC, and we are both putting money back into this project to subsidize the 4 houses, so they will be sold, have already been sold, to people at 80% or below income. So we're calling it working family housing, and those houses, it's hard to say this, but they're selling for $199,000. And then the other 10 houses are selling at $400,000. Now, because of the gentrification that's going on in Fishtown, we're able to do that, even though I have to say, the 4 houses that we were able to sell that is subsidized, we had over 150 people apply for those houses, and we could only do 4. So that just goes to show the need for moderate, even lower income housing in these neighborhoods. that are having such stress put on them by the forces that are outside. And I know everybody wants their neighborhood to be wonderful and hip and happening, and I want that for my neighborhood also. I mean, I've worked very hard to get this neighborhood to turn around. But on the other hand, we also want to make sure that people are not forced out of the neighborhood because they can no longer afford to live there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chairwoman Blackwell and members of the committee, Councilman Greenlee. My name is Brad Copeland. I am the Director of Real Estate Development for Mount Airy USA, which is the community development corporation serving its namesake neighborhood in Northwest Philadelphia. I want to begin by saying thank you for considering what the city can do to increase its investment in affordable housing. I generally find that keeping an open mind to what is or might be possible goes a long way toward finding a path of meaningful discovery. So in keeping with the theme of open-mindedness, here we go. What if I told you that the city of Philadelphia currently, today, at this very moment, already has at its disposal somewhere in the neighborhood of $360 million to invest in affordable housing development? Would you believe me? You might, but you'd probably go on to ask with very natural skepticism and perhaps a hint of exasperation, okay, Brad, so what agency, department, or initiative will we have to cut in order to redirect this rather hefty sum toward your pet program? Well, what if I further told you that this $360 million comes at no cost to any other city program? In fact, what if I told you that these funds are the municipal equivalent of finding an unexpected, crisp $20 bill in your pants pocket? If I then told you that by spending these funds judiciously, you could generate additional revenue that would be used to fund other parts of the budget, I wonder what you would think of that. I can imagine your response might begin with a comment like, you asked us to keep an open mind and not lose our minds altogether. And possibly finish with remarks, although not unkindly, I'm sure, like, unicorns, leprechauns, and pots of gold, and having swampland in Florida are all wonderful ideas too. However, I assure you, these funds are no fantasy. You can find them on the city's balance sheet today, although you have to look for them in the accounts receivable. What am I referring to? What I'm talking about is the city's uncollected real estate property taxes, or at least 70% of them. How can these funds be used when they are uncollected, you may well ask? Well, I am not proposing that the city do a better job at collecting this revenue and then allocate it to affordable housing. That is a fantasy. What I am proposing is that the city begin to seriously think about how it can use this truly uncollectible portion of its outstanding real estate tax revenue as a subsidy for housing development. According to the Pew Charitable Trust's June 27, 2013 study on delinquent property taxes in Philadelphia, 70% of the city's delinquent real estate taxes were deemed to be uncollectible. At the time of the study, the city's real estate tax accounts receivable was $515 million, of which 70%, or $360 million, were deemed to be uncollectible by the study. One way we at Mount Airy USA have discovered to use these funds is through our work with Act 135, known as the Conservatorship Act, or the Abandoned and Blighted Property Act. When a property is being taken and redeveloped through conservatorship, the outstanding obligation that must be paid before all others is municipal liens. This means the amount of delinquent real estate taxes and penalties can be a very real limiting factor for us when trying to determine which vacant and blighted buildings are feasible projects and which are not. So far, using conservatorship, we have only been able to address properties that have very low outstanding tax balances. Many of the most blighted properties in our target area have such high tax balances that we cannot take them through the process. The underlying economics of the transaction don't pencil out. However, if the city made a policy decision to write down the tax and penalty balances, hence creating a form of acquisition and construction subsidy, many of these properties could be redeveloped. To date, this has not been the city's position. In fact, through its tax collection agents, the city has made it more difficult to use Act 135. Midway through our first conservatorship project, the city attempted to send the property to sheriff's sale. We had to withdraw another petition on a second property because the city sent that one to sheriff's sale shortly after being notified of our filing. That property still sits there today, just as vacant, just as blighted, just as non-tax revenue producing as it did the day we targeted it for conservatorship. City collection agencies have taken a nearsighted approach when it comes to conservatorship. Rather than seeing it as a process for removing blight and putting an asset back to productive revenue-generating use, the collectors have used conservatorship projects as a means of clawing back whatever meager scraps of revenue they can get a hold of. There seems to be very little reflection on the long-term implications and benefits of putting the property taxes back on the tax roll, or these properties back on the tax roll. And there has been no willingness, as far as I'm aware of, to wholesale write off dead collectibles in order to make more projects happen. Should the city adopt an alternate policy position, one that favors the removal of blight through tools like conservatorship, I believe there are additional opportunities to put these uncollectibles to good use. Some ideas might even be scalable, especially in partnership with city agencies like the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority and the Land Bank. I want to thank the committee again for keeping an open mind about the possibilities that exist for using the city's real estate tax collectibles as a way to generate additional affordable housing units. And I particularly want to thank you for indulging some of my own flights of fancy.
Thank you very much. Thank you both, and for your input. Thank you, and great ideas. Thank you very much. Panel 6 concerns citizens. Kanika Stewart, Temple University, MSW student, and Wendy Nickerson, likewise Temple University MSW students. We're very glad that you are here, and we're very happy again that you are students. For Anjali Chinani, one of my staff members. We're very glad you're here. Good afternoon. Please give us your name and then make your testimony.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Blackwell, members of the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homelessness, and everyone else in attendance. My name is Kanika Stewart, and I wear many different hats. Before I start, let me just say I have never spoke in such a forum as this before. So to say that I am extremely nervous would be an understatement. However, I have asked Christ to guide me, to guide my tongue, to allow me to speak effectively and in a way in which is welcoming to your ears, your hearts, and your minds. With that being said, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak. I am a part-time homeless outreach case manager for Project Home. I work primarily during winter initiative months at the Hub of Hope, which is a drop-in resource center for our homeless population located right below us in Suburban Station. I am also a full-time case manager at RHD's Woodstock Family Center, an emergency shelter for women and children. In addition to my two jobs, I am currently seeking my second master's at Temple University's Masters of Social Work program, where Professor Anjali Chinani, your staff, who's on your staff, Councilwoman Blackwell, is my professor. It is a no-brainer that I am here to advocate for increasing resources to expand the production and preservation of affordable housing in Philadelphia. One of the ideas I thought of for raising revenue and ending homelessness is to rehab abandoned houses, which I realize that so many people have spoken on that idea. I thought of zip codes like the one I live in, 19132 and 19133. Maybe reaching out to corporations such as Lowe's and Home Depot to donate supplies and/or volunteers to support the rehabilitation of the abandoned homes. Reaching out to developers such as Pearl Realties, Penrose Management, PMG Realty, and JG Real Estate, proposing tax cuts or breaks if they take on major rehab projects for the sole purpose of ending homelessness in Philadelphia. There are so many abandoned houses in Philadelphia, and if we collectively come up with a plan to identify, buy, and/or seize the abandoned homes, we just might end homelessness in Philadelphia. After the rehabbing of the homes, we can introduce home ownership to formerly homeless individuals, selling the homes to potential homeowners that were previously homeless, and those that agree to stay in the home for a minimum of 5 years, then rent or sell to other homeless individuals. The person affected by homelessness is housed. The city is making a profit as well as beautifying and ridding the community of unsafe abandoned homes. Another thought is because there are so many empty school buildings throughout the city, converting the school buildings into apartment buildings for individuals with disability that are Medicaid eligible. Funding for this idea and the above-mentioned ideas could come from the McKinney-Vento Act. When looking at other cities that adapted the model of taking abandoned homes or buildings and turning them into homes for the homeless population, I first looked at the city of New Orleans. New Orleans was the first city to end veteran homelessness. For this accomplishment to take place there was a collaboration between agencies that range from city, federal, and private to make the utilization of abandoned homes homes for homeless people. Other questions came up, like what about the owners of the abandoned homes? And who was to say who would have a say-so in the seizure of the homes? I thought that if the home was abandoned for 3 years, or if no one or someone used the home as an avenue to commit a crime, the home should be seized without question. Other considerations can be made for homeowners who have taken steps to save their homes but just couldn't. These are different thoughts I wanted to express in the hopes of adding to the conversation around ending homelessness in Philadelphia. Legislators have the power to erect change. They have the power to put laws in place to support these ideas, as well as the power to enhance or shoot down the idea. However, we as citizens, we have to be the voice of the voiceless, the voice that's able to say the problem when other people can't say the problem. I am a witness that there is power in numbers, and I feel that housing is a basic human right. Resources should be put in place not only to assist homeless individuals and/or families, but communities in which they will transition into. Philadelphia has a lot of homeless people and a lot of abandoned houses. My hope is that based on this testimony, it will open the conversation for change, and I thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, and we thank you for all your ideas. Great job. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman Blackwell, members of the Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless, and everyone else here today. My name is Wendy Nickerson, and I am a relatively new resident of Philadelphia, although I have spent most of my adult life in the surrounding area. After completing a career in pharmaceutical research and development, I am transitioning my life in a new direction. I am now a Master of Social Work student at Temple University, hoping to make a tangible difference for people here in the city. I have the pleasure of studying this term with Anjali Shenani on the topic of policy advocacy. Through her, I learned of this valuable hearing. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts on immediate shelter for the recently homeless. Living in Queen Village for the past 3 years, I see and interact with individuals experiencing homelessness on a daily basis. When a newly homeless man moved into a park near our home, I tried to connect him with services, including emergency shelter. As a recovered drug addict, his experience with the emergency shelter system was extremely challenging. He was robbed, punched, and exposed to active drug use within this system, a real problem for a recovered addict trying to stay clean. Therefore, this man spent several months living in winter conditions on the park bench, and he suffered infections and a heart attack before he finally received general assistance and found a place to live away from drug use. His experience with the current emergency shelter system, along with accounts from other homeless individuals, which I have read about in City Paper and the Philadelphia Inquirer, have led me to believe that the current emergency shelter program, as it stands, can be a barrier to rapidly rehousing those who have recently become homeless. After learning of a program in Great Britain for temporary shelters, I had an idea for expanding the availability of better emergency shelters for individuals and families. At any given time in Philadelphia, habitable properties, including rental units, are likely vacant. I would like you to consider the possibility of the development of a program to enable rental property owners or owners of unused habitable properties to deposit these into a pool for a few months for the use of temporary emergency housing. The idea would be that once a homeless person or family comes to any homeless-facing agency in the city, they could be immediately placed in one of these properties for a temporary period of 2 months or so. And during this time, a caseworker could interact with the occupants to develop a longer-term housing solution and address other case management needs. In return, the property owners could be offered something such as tax break incentives, funding for property repairs, and/or very low-cost or interest-free loans for improvements to these properties following the term of emergency use. Properties might be deposited under these terms for a period of 6 months to a year and could be redeposited if all parties are satisfied with the agreement. This might be accompanied by some sort of insurance policy to cover any damage incurred by occupants. Perhaps this program could be funded in part from Section 3, Interim Construction Financing, Section 5, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Section 7, Emergency Solutions Grant of Bill 150466, and through property tax incentives. I also believe that the emergency shelter system as it exists should be re-examined. Rather than several small, overflowing, minimally supported shelters, the city could set up a few bigger, better run, safe shelters for true emergency conditions, such as Code Blue. The agencies currently running small shelters, along with local police, could help with transportation to these shelters, where contact with caseworkers would be available. Perhaps empty school buildings or churches could be made available for this use. City and nonprofit agencies could collaborate to staff these on a rotating basis. Funding could be pooled from the money spent on smaller shelters now and from federal grants through the Stuart B. McKinney Homeless Assistance Act. A collaborative capital fundraising campaign might also help fund the initial setup of these bigger shelters. Thank you for your consideration of these ideas. I am confident that our city cares, and together we have the capability to improve recovery from homelessness.
Thank you very much. I'm reminded of a gentleman named Rob Hess, who was head of homeless services here at one point. He went to New York to head their DHS, Department of Human Services and Welfare Department, and he created programs where folks would stay indoors, and they gave them a year to find employment, and they gave them a year or more. Something was 5 years where people could stay indoors. So both of you are very inspiring, and we can do these things if we want to enough. Thank you. Thank you for caring.
Thank you.
Teresa?
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Teresa McCormick, and I am from Concerned Citizens of Point Breeze. As you know, in the Point Breeze area, we are facing serious gentrification and homelessness and those who are losing their homes. In Point Breeze, our solution for the homelessness is to have X amount of properties for affordable housing in each district, which we call set-aside. Why should we have the leftovers that are currently given to the developers? Let that go for each district for those homes that could be set for those for low and moderate homes. Also, Philadelphia has the highest poverty rate in the country, which means homelessness rate in Philadelphia. Recently, my child, which graduated from Vermont College, we had to stop in New York. and we were at the bus station and Penn Station, you'll be amazed at how many people who are living there at night to sleep due to homelessness. We don't want to see that here. Also, low and moderate affordable housing is also what we want, but also not regular housing. When we say regular housing is what they're calling now workforce development. Workforce development starts here in the city of Philadelphia at $200,000 to $250,000. That's not affordable housing. In Point Breeze, approximately 200 properties have been sold for high or affordable high or workforce development. Workforce development, wow, that's a $500,000 home. In the new term, which is deceiving to all of us, which is called workforce development, starts at $200,000 to $250,000. Philadelphia, which has the highest poverty rate in the country, the need for low, moderate, and which I haven't heard anyone address is low-wage housing. Low-wage housing are those who are making minimum wage here in the city of Philadelphia. This is critical to the city of Philadelphia. The solutions we came up with is one, property set-aside programs to address the homelessness. Two, solution two, the schools that were closed are for low-income rentals and senior housing. Currently, there's a long waiting list for our seniors as well, anywhere from 3 to 4 years. The waiting list is high. That means not to make more condos, giving incentives for developers to build low, moderate, and low-wage affordable housing. Solution three, let's re-examine the zoning code to remove some of the by right policies for zoning codes, which will give the communities a chance to advocate with the developers for more balanced reinvestment. Solution number four, let's talk about the 2035 plan. The previous and upcoming 2035 plan, there must be 8 to 12 meetings held in each district, at least 3 meetings held in the low-income communities, while providing education classes on the 2035 plan and the zoning code. This will address some of our low and moderate income families to know what's going on. Plans must be voted on by the communities before it's submitted to the council person. Then with the community's approval for an ordinance. Question, why is the city of Philadelphia pushing gentrification in African American and low-income communities? Our community asks for long-term residents who have voted year after year for help by our politicians. The 2035 plan remapping does not, and I'm going to repeat that again, does not address low, moderate, low-wage income. It continues to increase the level of homelessness. Solution 5, developers who will build low, moderate, low-wage, affordable income housing must go to classes to help increase the balanced reinvestment in our community. In Point Breeze, we had a developer who wanted to build 44 to 66 condos in our community. A resident in our community sued and won, but the Planning Commission, behind the community's back, after having 1,000 people to come out and vote against this project, tried to change the zoning code for this developer. This cannot happen. This increases homelessness in our community. 1 out of 3 should be low, moderate wage affordable housing. Again, properties that is being sold in our community should be 1 out of 3 should be affordable housing and must be implemented by the LNI. The implementation will also eliminate the IRMX, which is, if anyone doesn't know here, increases condos in our city. The focus on senior citizen housing, low, moderate, and low-wage housing in Philadelphia, we believe will solve the problems here in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. McCormick, for your excellent statements and for all the work you do in your area to try to prevent gentrification and keep life affordable for your neighbors. Thank you. Our final panel, panel number 7, Concerned Citizens Continued. Jean Kouassi, Mayor's Commission on African and Caribbean Immigrant Affairs, Faye Anderson, Director of All That Philly Jazz, and Daryl Zaslow of Langhorne, PA. We know him from his work with HAPCO. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Thank you. Thank you for your patience, gentlemen and ladies. Feel free to identify yourself to the record and make your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Faye Anderson. I'm director of All That Philly Jazz, a public history project that's telling the story of Philadelphia's jazz heritage from bebop to hip hop. All That Philly Jazz is a member of the Philadelphia Coalition for Affordable Communities. I'm speaking today in my capacity as director of the project, not on behalf of the coalition. Last year, the Penrose Company demolished the John Coltrane mural at 33rd and Diamond Streets. Penrose has been feeding at the public trough of government subsidies for decades, but in an instant, the company erased a tribute to an American cultural icon. While the nation celebrates the centennial of the birth of Billie Holiday and Mary Lou Williams, both of whom are depicted in the Women of Jazz mural in Strawberry Mansion, the Philadelphia Housing Authority plans to demolish this cultural asset. What does this have to do with the affordable housing crisis? Kelvin Jeremiah said it best in his testimony before the committee today and on April 27th. I quote, "The affordable housing crisis that confronts this great city is an issue of deep-rooted poverty. Solving the poverty problem will surely solve the affordable housing crisis. Philadelphia is the poorest big city in the nation. A whopping 40% of school-aged children live in poverty. There is a correlation between education and poverty. If the educational achievement of poor children is increased, fewer will end up on PHA's 10-year waiting list. A growing body of evidence shows that students with access to arts education perform better on standardized tests. In addition to improved student achievement, arts education contributes to the development of cognitive and social skills, nurtures a motivation to learn, increases student attendance, and fosters a positive school environment. At-risk students cite their participation in the arts as a reason for staying in school. Students involved in arts instruction report less boredom in school. Ask students why they dropped out of school, they will say they were bored. The School District of Philadelphia has drastically cut arts and music programs. 25% of schools offer no music instruction at all. In the absence of arts education, murals may be poor students' only exposure to the arts. At the opening of the new Whitney Museum, First Lady Michelle Obama said the arts, quote, could inspire a young person to rise above the circumstances of their life and reach for something better. Community-based art inspires young people to reach for their star. To be clear, it is not about preserving brick and mortar. Instead, it's about the transformative power of the arts to engage, motivate, and keep students in schools. It's also not about money. Through digital and mobile technology, a mural can be recreated at a fraction of its original cost. Indeed, the cost of preserving this great city's cultural heritage would be far less than, say, Penrose's hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So you're saying they're slated to tear down the mural?
Yes, this is the Women of Jazz mural in the 3200 of Arlington. It will be torn down sometime this year, the date to be determined.
All right, I'm happy to work on that.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman, good afternoon. Darrell Zaslow, legal counsel to HAPCO, the Homeowners Association of Philadelphia. First of all, Councilwoman, may I express all of our appreciation to you, Councilwoman, for sitting with such diligence and fortitude through all of these hearings. It's appreciated by those of us that testify and enables the record to be made complete. Councilwoman, we are here today. I'm here with Victor Pinkney, a vice president of HAPCO, and Mr. Greg Workman, who is also vice president of HAPCO, with an attempt at a solution that can be implemented to really create housing in an affordable way for residents of the city. The legal vehicle, being a lawyer, I'm looking for the legal answer, and the legal word is sequestration, which the Councilwoman has heard before. Sequestration, Councilwoman, is a vehicle under Pennsylvania law which began back in the year 1818. And then it was in the year 1901 and finally incorporated into the 1923 statute, which governs Philadelphia to this day. What is sequestration? Sequestration, Madam Councilwoman, is the ability of you as the government to commandeer property which is tax delinquent. I heard Ms. Stewart, I'm not sure if she's here any longer, I believe her name is Ms. Stewart. She gave the right approach here. She said, seize the houses. She said to you, Councilwoman, well, there's 40,000 abandoned properties, seize them. Well, that's the logical response. Why are there all those properties that are rotting into the ground, and at the same time you have people who have nowhere to live? So the answer is, in seizing properties, how do you do that? Well, we all know about foreclosure. And foreclosure is long and difficult, and you have to notify all kinds of people that have liens against the property. It is really unworkable and produces a tiny fraction of properties for real use, and that sells the properties usually to developers also. You heard good testimony about the conservatorship law. That's very good. Conservatorship allows community development organizations and individuals, all with basically a private profit motive, because to do conservatorship, you have to make a profit. You can't do conservatorship on a property without having the money work out right. If the money doesn't work, who's going to take on a property and pay back all these taxes? That's why the gentleman's suggestion was, well, just write off the taxes. It'll make conservatorship work. Sequestration, Council Chair, is your legal weapon to go out into every tax delinquent property in this city and very simply for you to take control of it. You walk into the courtroom and you say to the judge, this property has $5,000 in back taxes. The city takes control of the property and is permitted now to rent the property out. You can rent the property out at market value, and the reason for our participation today is to explain that you can rent these properties out as affordable housing. If you have a property that might be a $750 rental on the open market, designate it as affordable. All these experts, they know what these numbers mean: very low income, extremely low income, housing affordability, 30% of income. They have all the formulas worked out. And you are able to send in the Revenue Department to tell us every property which is tax delinquent in your district, to have L&I give you the records of every such tax delinquent property as to what's doing with the property structurally, and send the law department in to very simply get this court order. It's a simple sheet of paper. And then the property is put out by all the organizations that have testified to you for use by people as low income or market rate housing. Now, you collect rent from that. The rent, first of all, can be low, make it affordable. Every dollar of rent that is collected goes to pay, first, you pay the taxes that are owed to the city. And you pay all the costs of repairs, and you pay the costs of insurance. You pay the cost of managers to manage the property. You have the ability to take a property, it might be worth $5,000. No one is going to buy that property. But you don't need to buy the property because the city has a right to take the rental value. You do not become the owner. You're taking the rental value. You can rent that property out for the next 50 years to pay off the costs of fixing the property and to pay all the back taxes and all the other costs of management which are required. This 1923 law, I suggest, is a real solution for you. You are a leader, Councilwoman, in your district of creating neighborhood boards. You wanted your neighborhood people to have a say in what's going on in their neighborhood. Take that board and get them a list of every delinquent property, let them look at the delinquent properties and report back to you and say, you know what, there's 50 properties, 5 of them we think could be fixed up for $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000. Now, if you take a property that needs $15,000 in repairs, and you say, where are we going to get the money from? Under sequestration, all these different funds, the Housing Trust Fund, makes the money available, but not giving the money away. The money is made available. You fix this house for $15,000. Now you're collecting $300 a month rent, affordable rent. $300 is $3,600 a year. Okay, it'll take us 66 months to pay off the $15,000. But at the end of that time, it's 5 years. There's a house that's fixed up. It was substandard, now it's a standard house. A family is living there at an affordable market rate. And the good news is the owner still owes all the taxes. All the rent that's collected goes to pay off the tax delinquency, bringing more money in. All the money that's collected goes to pay the cost of sequestering the property, the cost of managing the property. It is completely a win-win-win situation. Affordable housing, those who need it win, they get an affordable property. The neighborhood wins because you have a property that was falling down, is now being fixed up. The city wins. The city is going to collect back money if it takes 50 years. You hear people say write off the amount of money that's owed. I wouldn't write the money off. Put somebody in there, affordable, let them pay $100 a month rent. If it takes 20 years to pay off the tax delinquency, don't write it off. Collect it for the city. So the procedure which we've suggested, I took the liberty of preparing a chart. I don't know if the chairwoman had an opportunity to look at it, to fit right in the structure of government, where it is. If you look at the testimony that we're presenting today, there's a big double sheet showing between the office of the mayor and the office of council people where this would fit into government, what the various roles would be, the bottom line being that the city can take control of these abandoned properties, make them available at an affordable rate to people in need, and the city will benefit, and so will everyone else. I thank you, Madam Council Chair, and Mr. Pinckney, and Vice President Wortman may also have a few words to say.
So you are talking about abandoned properties only, I assume?
Delinquent properties. Any tax delinquent property in this city can be yours for 15 minutes in court. Any delinquent property. If the property is tax delinquent or delinquent in water and sewer or delinquent in some liens they didn't pay, every property, the remedy of collection, the remedy is just underused. It's called sequestration. You don't have to foreclose on the property, which takes years. You go into court and say, until the city's paid back our money, the city will collect the rent. You collect the rent. You put the money towards the cost of repairs. You put the money towards the cost of insurance. You put the money towards the cost of management. You put the money towards paying the delinquent taxes. So the money all comes back into the city. Any delinquent property. I'm suggesting abandoned properties for today's purposes with people in need of affordable housing because they're abandoned. But the law is very clear. If you have a property owner in that property who's not paying his taxes, you can move them out. You can perform your own eviction of people from their own properties in order to collect the money to pay the taxes that are owed. It's a dual strategy. One is to collect taxes. That's not your focus today. But coincidentally, this procedure collects taxes. Your focus today is looking for affordable housing. There's 40,000 properties. Everyone says we can't do it because the properties are worthless. But that doesn't matter to the institutional use of the city of Philadelphia, which lasts for hundreds of years. This law began in 1818. The law can go to 2118. And if it takes that long for the city to get the $1,000 that it's owed, so be it. In the meantime, you're fixing up properties, and all the money that the city collects by rent goes back into the Housing Trust Fund. It doesn't cost the city $1. The owner is responsible for all of it. The property is liable for payment of every dollar of tax, lien, insurance, cost, repairs, maintenance, management, every cost that it has. It doesn't cost the city $1. The city can afford to wait. We've been waiting 50 years on some of these properties. It's going nowhere. If you wait another 5 years to put some property into productive use, you can put it into productive use immediately and collect the money for a few years. Again, I suggest it's a win-win. We are prepared to meet with you, with your staff, with anyone who has the sense of setting up such a program, because we believe it'll really solve these problems and give a lot of affordable housing to be made available. If you go through your district, you are the chief, you're the mayor of your district, Councilwoman. Everyone knows your power in your district. I'll bet you know a lot of properties in your district that are not inhabited, they're abandoned, they're tax delinquent, but if you look at it, you say, you know what, if I had $10,000, the property's not worth it, but I could fix that property up, and I'll put in somebody of a low-income need at $300 a month, and however long it takes to pay back the $10,000 that you needed to fix that property up, that's how long it takes, because the city can afford to wait. But if we start now, in 5 years, or 8, or 10, and certainly over 10, 20, 30 years, you can solve this problem very easily.
What do you think of the land bank?
The land bank is a perfect vehicle for this. The land bank, under state law, specifically has the power to acquire interests in real estate. And everyone is misperceiving it. Not everyone, but it is being misperceived. They think, oh, it's only about buying and selling property, the land bank. But it is not. The land bank law allows the land bank to acquire interests in real estate. And a lease is an interest, a life estate is an interest. If you understand real estate law, I'm a real estate lawyer, there are dozens of kinds of interests in real estate which do not include owning a property. There's more to real estate than buying and selling. The land bank is a perfect vehicle to incorporate this procedure to let them be involved in the sequestration process also. Instead of focusing on let's sell properties, let's find developers to buy properties. That has to be all by the profit motive. There's no profit motive here. We take this property, we're going to rent it out, however long it takes for the land bank, whatever the entity would be, to collect the money. That's how long it'll take. You can afford to wait. We can afford to wait. The city can afford to wait.
Well, as you know, the land bank isn't fully operational because we still don't have labor issues worked out. But with regard to sequestration and foreclosure, you know, we have to be, the purpose of government is to focus and serve its citizens. So I don't think any of us in good conscience could just evict people because they owe money. If life were that simple, people wouldn't have utility bills. You know, we just put people out, take the houses, say, give me $5,000 and I'll rent it to another needy person. Life just isn't that simple.
Well, Councilman, I didn't mean in any way to suggest that you should be moving people out. You have 40,000 abandoned properties. If we get through all 40,000 of them, then you can start deciding what to do with the ones that are occupied. I'm not at all suggesting that you should do that. I'm saying you have the power to do it in response to your question. I would suggest the focus needs to be on abandoned properties that no one lives in. And the new property maintenance code defines substandard housing that can be rehabilitated. It's a very specific category of real estate in the city of Philadelphia. It's property which can be rehabilitated at a somewhat modest cost. And that's what we're looking for. Properties that for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 can be made habitable for somebody in need. And normally you would say, well, how can you spend $15,000 if the rent is going to be $300? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to a developer, but it certainly makes sense to the city of Philadelphia. If you can collect $3,000 a year and someone's going to have a house, a nice house at that amount, at that rental rate, and it takes 10 years for the city to get its tax money and to pay off the costs, 10 years is nothing in the life of a city. These issues have been laying on this very table for 10 years, 10 times over. So again, I don't want to imply evicting anybody. We're talking about putting people into properties which are at this moment abandoned.
And you mentioned the Conservation District. As you know, that would allow the city to decide the future, whether it be demolition, and they would decide what happens in neighborhoods, not the community groups, but not the neighborhood, but the city. So city planning could decide what they would like to see.
Yes,
And certainly, why have elected officials who are supposed to represent citizens if city planning, is appointed by the mayor and can be switched at any point by the mayor, if they make decisions about what happens in neighborhoods, why have elected officials?
I believe in the neighborhood level because you know your streets and you know your neighborhoods and you know what houses are marketable to anyone, regular income, low income, you know. And the community group that I would suggest be put together, a neighborhood sequestration board, that's what I would call it. You appoint it. Each councilmanic district appoints such a neighborhood sequestration board to receive all the information. What properties are there that are delinquent? What properties are abandoned? Let the people in the neighborhood drive by. It's around the corner from my house. Let me look at that house. This house doesn't have a roof and it has no windows and no doors and the walls are falling down. We'll come back to that one. This house here looks pretty much intact. What's the worst case scenario going on inside? We have to put in a new heater. We have to redo the plumbing. Find those houses. Your people can eyeball our own neighborhoods and know which houses are which. Out of the 40,000, pick 2,000. I hear everyone talking here. They made 30 houses. They put together 40 units. It's tiny numbers. We should be putting together thousands of properties. And I know in your district, you could put together 500 properties in a minute. That your local people, your activists, the mothers and fathers who live there, who know their streets, could say, I can get you a list of 500 houses that I think would be good if we only had a little bit of money to fix them up. And fix them up and put a tenant in at low rent, affordable rent, and begin to pay back the Housing Trust Fund or wherever the money would come from for all the money they put into rehab it over several years. And then, as I said, the owner, the buck stops with the owner. He or she owes the taxes. There's no escape. And in this procedure, a person that needs an affordable house, I don't care if we rent a house out for the next 50 years to pay back the taxes that are due for the last 10 years. That's the city's prerogative. That's the power of this state statute, which gives you the power to control it. The methodology, the creation, the balance between mayor and council, that is for council to ascertain. I gave a suggestion. As a matter of fact, this new concept of the Department of Planning and Development. I have a sense of it being under the Division of Housing and Community Development. If that sees the light of day after a referendum, it appears that it will. It's a perfect match to fit right in there, and the Housing Trust Fund is under that same division. So it all fits like a glove, and it will produce real results. I really believe that. Not just let's raise this tax and let's save money here, produce real results. And if you can set us, you know, Councilman, we're here to serve as you are. We stand prepared to flesh this out. A pilot program in your district. Take 50 houses in your district that you look at and you say, those 50 houses, legalize squatting. That's really what it is. The concept of the graduate student sees them. Well, yes, the government should not be hampered to be driving through your district, looking at falling down, dilapidated property, and you are like powerless to do anything. And your constituents say to you, why can't you do anything about that house? And the answers are complicated. Well, this answer is easy. I'm going to seize that house. Sequestration, that's the legal word. We're going to seize that house. We're going to fix it up at the cost of the owner. We're going to put someone in there who can afford to pay some affordable rent, and we're going to apply that rent into repayment of those issues.
Thank you. So when we talk about legalized squatting, I haven't even heard a term like that in many, many years. You make it all sound very simple. It isn't simple. We have to care for people in need. We have to care for people who are homeless. We have to deal with people who live in places and they can't afford it. I've been in homes without running water. I've been in homes that are in such bad repair. All of these panels who testified today, up to yours, all of these panels deal with people who are in need, deal with everything from handicapped people to homeless people, deal with how we rehab. We talked a lot about that today with the Housing Trust Fund and PACDC. We know people are in need, but it's easy to say, just pay, and then the city will get its money and everything will be hunky-dory. Life is just not that way. And all of the groups who testified before you were on the same track in terms of the needs of people and that we have to find programs to try to help them. And that's what it's really about, to say that our primary goal is to get money to the city when you have human beings who are suffering and who are dealing with these issues. Doesn't seem to me to be the way we should go.
Councilwoman, the issue of the taxes is completely a side issue. I'm just saying that by coincidence, this also pays delinquent tax. That's not why we're here. These people who will testify today need real estate to put people in. And this plan creates the real estate, not for us to put anybody in, for them, all these wonderful, knowledgeable people who know these issues. They decide who needs what and at how much. Our job is to say, here is physical bricks. You tell us who should be in there. You tell us how much they should pay. But at least we can deliver, you can deliver, because you're the one with the power, you can deliver the bricks. What we're saying goes hand in glove with what everyone else here testified. They all know the people. They all know the needs. They all know the strategies. They are critical to all of this. But they need real estate to put people into. You have 100,000 people on a waiting list. Well, you need 100,000 units. If you can prepare out of a procedure like this, 10,000 units, my goodness, where have you produced 10,000 units up until this time? And then give the 10,000 units to all these wonderful people, the experts, who know what the needs are and how the needs arise and how they want to deal with providing for those needs. This plan is nuts and bolts of the law. This is how the city has the right to take possession of a property. These are the legal powers that the city has to implement that strategy. And then after the legalities are done, because that's my role, everyone else can tell you how to allocate the properties among those in need. But we need to get the properties, and this is the strategy to do it, is the thrust of our testimony.
Yeah. Do you think we would have 100,000 people waiting for PHA lists if they had the wherewithal to move into private housing, workforce housing? Why do you think PACDC came with at least 8, maybe 10 suggestions as to how we can raise more money? Because there is such a great need. But all of us in this room realize that the need means we have to come up with ways to help people. We can't just make it a monetary goal and everything's fine. The city gets what it determines it gets because men make budgets. Men and women make budgets. We decide what it is we need, and we decide what we ask the public to pay. It is not some God-given mandate. This is what happens, and these people have to pay or else. They also talked about unemployment. I don't remember what she said unemployment was, but that was also testified to today. The unemployment, the need for housing rehab, and how we focus a big part of income. Housing Trust Fund does that as well because of the need. And people want to stay in their neighborhoods, and people don't want to be gentrified. They just want the ability to survive like the rest of us. Maybe we don't, some of us don't realize it because God has blessed us to live decent lives, but we have to realize there are just so many people who don't have their ability, and we have to be our brother's keeper, and we're elected to do so in this council. And everybody here who testified today said the same thing in their way from their respective positions.
That's beautifully stated, Councilwoman. That really capsulizes the problem.
Thank you. Thank you for testifying.
Councilwoman, my name is Victor Pinckney. I'm the Vice President of HAPCO. I'm actually speaking today now.
Identify yourself again, I'm sorry.
Victor Pinckney, the Vice President of HAPCO. I'm going to change my testimony slightly through the conversation that you and Mr. Zaslow had here. sequestration is something that can be used to help the homeless and those who don't have. Next door to my mother, there's 2 abandoned houses that have been abandoned, been sitting there for over 15 years. Sequestration would allow the city to go in, fix those houses up. Now, there's no owner of record that I could find, because there was another gentleman and myself have both been looking into trying to buy the properties. Sequestration allows the city to go in, take those properties, fix them up, and make them use them for affordable housing. There's been a lot of good ideas that were put forth today by folks about what to do as far as finding affordable housing, but the one thing that I've thought that was not being shown is once you use the funds, where are more funds coming from without increasing taxes and fees?
Is this property vacant, you said, next to someone in your family?
Two of them, right? And it's all throughout the neighborhood is like that. I'm sure I went to some of your properties in West Philly a couple years ago with a gentleman by the name of Jim Sims. You gave us a list. And it's pretty much where a lot of blocks are. You have 4 and 5 broken tubes, and the block just goes down. This is a way to stop that in its tracks. Also, it fits, it's doing 2 things at the same time. It's stopping the decline in the property, it's also providing housing.
Do you know the owner of those properties?
No, I do not. Have no, one of them may be PHA, I think someone said, but the other one is was privately owned.
Have you tried to purchase them?
I tried to purchase the one, not the one next door to her, but the other one on the other side, could not locate the owner. There's a few properties like that in the neighborhood where my office is, which is 28th and Cecil B. Moore, Councilman Clark's district. I know there's a few in your neighborhood because a couple years ago, you gave us a list and me and Jim Sims went through it. He had an idea about how to get certain properties rehabbed. This is not a bad idea. I understand where you thinking we're talking about putting people out. No. Look for the empty houses, the ones that nobody are using. The owners won't come forth. You don't have to go through the process of taking them. You can just go. You can go in and make use of them. I don't remember the correct legal term Darrell used when you were speaking previously about taking possession, not taking possession without taking ownership. Okay, the city doesn't have to take ownership of these properties. And the thing about it is, once this money is paid off, if the owner wants the property back, it's there for him. But we'll probably find out most of these owners are gone. These properties were either the owners died off, the kids left the neighborhood. Who knows what's happening? But this is a way to do something. But
we have sheriff's sale as well as land bank. We have processes to deal with vacant properties.
Yes, it takes several years. Several years before something comes up to a sheriff's sale. The property where my office is was a sheriff's. I had to force it up to sheriff's sale. This is about 20-something years ago. It was vacant for almost 6 years. So this process is something that could work. It's just we need to look into it.
We will review all of these ideas, suggestions, and programs during the summer. And Herb Wetzel and Janae, who's recently with us, an intern, and Anjali Chinani and others, we're going to look into all of it. But I will tell you that I will never support just taking properties. And, 20-some years is a long time to say you couldn't even, it happens. But certainly we have to have positive approaches, and we have to do what we can to preserve human dignity and human life.
Right. We're not saying take the occupied properties. We're speaking of the ones that are vacant, the ones that no...
Have you contacted PHA about one of the properties?
Yes, I have contacted PHA, and I believe it's another HAPCO member has also contacted PHA. To give you, and I know you know, but I'm going to say, PHA, there was a building across the street from my mother's home that the PHA had a very good tenant in. The lady died, her kids moved out. The property sat there for 10 years. The gentleman who owned the barber shop across the street for 10 years tried to buy the property. It's now a vacant lot. PHA still owns it.
And again, I say that is why Councilwoman Sanchez created a land bank, and that is one of the issues that it will deal with once it's up and running.
But the land bank has to have land. A bank, someone has to put money into it. A land bank, someone has to put land into it. All this is the way legally to get interest in real estate into the land bank. The land bank doesn't have anything of its own. It needs things put into it, and this is one way to get an interest in real estate into the land bank.
Well, I will say we'll be happy to look into it.
Thank you. Mr.
But,
Greg Wortman is our vice president. He's going to say a few words.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, Councilman.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for your time.
Give us your name.
Greg Wortman. I am the second vice president behind Victor Pickney, the first vice president. And I just want to thank you for taking time. This is an important issue for Philadelphia. I have lived here since coming to Temple University 40 years ago, and I want to tell you that one of the things that having lived at Temple University and lived in that neighborhood, I am very much in favor of finding affordable housing for the residents of Philadelphia. I find it, and HAPCO is definitely on the forefront of trying to help as well in this matter. I just recently conducted a poll amongst our members, 2,000 strong, and found out that most of our members are the smaller members owning 1 to 10 units, and their rental incomes are of moderate to low income. And we are on the forefront to help with this situation. Thank you.
We thank you all very much, and thank you for coming today. And is there anyone else who would like to testify? Then we will say, let me say, on behalf of City Council's Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless, I would like to first thank all of you who have testified today and also at the last hearing on this resolution, which is 140577. It has been both informative, enlightening, and certainly not only informative and enlightening, but it has given us the opportunity to hear various points of view. It has given our committee not only a greater understanding of the scope of affordable housing crisis, but ideas and concepts that we might be able to use to create greater resources at the local level. As this hearing concludes, it is not the end, but the beginning of a process that this committee is undertaking. In that vein, I've asked Herb Wetzel to convene a group of interested individuals to work over the coming months to research the feasibility of various proposals that have been offered as part of this hearing and to explore any other ideas that might be beneficial. Please email Mr. Wetzel if you are interested in participating. After having researched the feasibility of various proposals, I will ask that the group make recommendations to this committee on ways that this group can increase resources for the preservation and production of affordable housing in Philadelphia. Again, thank you so much for your participation, and we will recess subject to the call of the chair. Thank you.